So, assessments have always played a crucial role in how we identify potential, how we develop talent, how we shape future leaders. But with the rapid rise of AI and digital tools, we're facing both some kind of real opportunities, but also some real risks. So today we're diving into a subject that sits right at the heart of that kind of intersection between innovation and humanity. And we're going to be answering the question, how do we harness the power of technology, particularly AI, to build fairer, more human-centered approaches to leadership, assessment and development? So, and with me to discuss this today is a real expert in the field of leadership assessment, Tom Verboven from the Talent Enterprise, which is part of the Mercer Group. A big welcome to you, Tom.
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. Now, tell us where you're dialing in from today.
From Dubai.
So what's the temperature out there today?
I guess it's like 42 or something.
Yeah, it's August. I remember being in Dubai in August, and I remember just walking from the car park into the air-conditioned office, and
Yeah,
in those
it's
few
enlightening.
seconds, I was just a hot mess. It was just awful.
Yeah.
It can be quite painful, can't it? Anyway, just tell us a little bit about you. I mentioned you work for the Talent Enterprise,
Yeah.
which I think is a consultancy firm, isn't it, that
Yeah.
specializes in leadership
HR
assessment.
consultancy. Yeah.
HR consultancy specializing in
I mean
leadership
Mercer, and
assessment.
then the talent enterprise is very specific. Core business is assessments.
Perfect. So how did you get into that?
In general, to the assessment business, because I'm in there or like for quite a while. I
Yeah.
come from I think I just started when they stopped doing pen and paper and personality questionnaires and reasoning tests where you had to score like. And when I started, they still had like the whole cave in our offices was like full of personality questionnaire papers.
Yeah.
So I just started at the moment that they stopped doing it and start automating scoring and reports. But that's how long I'm in the business. I ended by accident. I always wanted to become a professional basketball player. That clearly didn't work. I then wanted to become a diplomat. That also clearly didn't work. So by accident, I ended up
A
in this space.
diplomat, that's quite kind
Yeah,
of specific, isn't it?
yeah. It is. I always wanted to travel the world. And
Yeah.
also want to tell, go to consultancy, Tom. That's also a good opportunity. You can travel the
You
world. So
definitely
here,
travel.
yeah,
Yeah, you definitely
yeah.
travel. I wanted to be a ballerina.
Okay.
But two factors. One, I got to nearly 6 foot by the time I was kind of 11.
Okay, yeah.
And you don't see many 6 foot ballerinas.
No,
And secondly, I wasn't good enough. So,
okay.
yeah, we need to
But you
be.
should have played basketball, 6 foot.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
comes handy.
Exactly. Okay, so let's dive into this issue around assessments and just kind of give us your overview of where we currently stand in the kind of the adoption of AI
Yeah.
and technology in assessments. Where are we standing there? And then maybe we could perhaps talk about some of the benefits of using AI, but also some of the risks.
Yeah. So where do we stand now? So just because I mentioned that I come from just not the pen and paper, so I'm not old enough. But I've been there for over 20 years, where there was very little innovation. Actually. So you go from the automation of the scoring, the reporting, and then you had years that it didn't change a lot. It was more focused on validity, reliability, robustness of methodologies. Then you've seen this like assessment platforms where you build like one platform. So that was not that long ago. And not all companies or consultancies have that assessment platform. But typically it was one central database where you send the different exercise where assessors come in, do the scoring, if the storage, you can do dashboarding, etc. That's actually pretty recent. So the innovation went really slow, and it's now like a quantum leap. So it's
Yeah.
just it's like a tipping point almost, where you see that. now the focus is rather on AI and technology and less on the validity, reliability, robustness. And you've seen some companies, I don't know if you know the story of Hireview, who started this
Yeah.
AI interviewing with facial expression that got a backlash and reputational issues, etc. Rightfully so, because they went too early. And you see also from clients, we get a lot of push, like they want AI, regardless if it's valid, reliable. They want to show off that they use AI for their management. So we really feel that clients are pushing for AI, which is good because it forces us to innovate. But we need to be mindful, of course, that we keep reliable, as you said in your introduction, unbiased, etc. So
Yeah, and we're
that's
going to dive into the bias piece. So,
yeah,
what is the? I mean, I take your point about it's not about adopting AI for the sake of adopting AI. It's got to be about improving the experience, whether that be how accessible it is, how cost effective it is, how reliable it is. And what's the experience for me as a person going through this? You want it to be better, not just be more AI.
yeah,
What are the kind of assessments that we're seeing now then that, how is the experience different
yeah,
to the one that I've done the
yeah,
battery of leadership
yeah,
assessments, which
yeah.
would take 2 days. And how is it different these days?
So it's very different. And maybe if I have to break it down, because I mean, I also want to talk AI in a very pragmatic way. So if we break down assessment, typically you have different steps, yeah, right? The first one is you define what are you looking for? What's
Yeah.
the ideal leadership profile in a company? How is it aligned with the strategy, the values, the culture, etc.? So that's the first step. Where it's still, and talking about good leadership, that's that's a debate as such. No, if you ask 100 people what is good leadership, you get different answers.
Yeah.
It's also with how your worldview, etc. That's still classic, competency frameworks. You have focus groups, so there's not a lot of AI there. If you ask AI what good leadership looks like, you do get kind of a nuanced picture. You can even like force like our middle-aged man like myself better in leadership, and then you do get kind of a nuanced answer. So that's the first step, like knowing what you're going to assess. Then based on that, we typically design an assessment matrix. So what are the exercises we're going to do? If we look at strategy, then maybe some reasoning tests, some psychometrics, some business case, or some role plays, whatever. So that's the second. And then the actual assessment, we can, in theory, now assess leaders without any human assessor interaction. So basically, my job is became obsolete. If I don't see it in practice yet, but that's what we could do. No? If you look at interviews, then it can be totally AI. And you remember this interview where you have like three questions and then you have to talk to a video and then it's
Yeah.
recorded and then still have an assessor in the back
Yeah.
who's scoring it, but you didn't have the opportunity to probe, which was, I think, from a candidate experience, super annoying. I mean, depends who you talk to, probably as well. But you see now conversational AI where the avatar adapts the questions based on what you were saying. So AI can be automated, AI, algorithm, whatever you feel. All the psychometrics, reasoning tests, there was already no intervention of an assessor. And then everything has to do with simulation, like role play, business cases. We do see pretty impressive AI tools. Right? If you have companies like, and that's more startups like Fizzy Lemon in the Netherlands, etc. They do really role playing with an avatar where they react depending what you're saying. So ideal for assessing people management skills, for example, or influencing skills or negotiation skills, and you get direct feedback from the AI tool, and they can also rate. So the whole process can be AI if you want.
So, I
I
mean,
don't like,
obviously, I first kind of came into contact with AI from an assessment point of view, particularly with interviews, would be that it was quite useful to create your shortlist, or at least your
yeah,
shorter long list. It would sort of do the weeding out of the
yeah,
completely unsuitable people.
yeah,
And I think
yeah,
what I'm hearing you say now is that it's not only doing your long list to short list, it's also providing you with in-depth ratings, assessments, rankings of people, and presenting you with the best ideal candidate you could
yeah.
get within the people who've applied.
Yeah, that's of course a bit the theory now. And then if you
Yeah.
take, because an assessment always has also developmental dimension, or should have a developmental dimension to it. So the next step after an assessment should be then coaching, development, whatever. And also there you see strong, I think, especially in the L&D phase, because reliability, validity is a bit less important. You see really great initiatives. If you look at AI coaching, and then again, so I think if typically, like for example, our company, we're using AI as a conversational to develop your IDP based on an assessment, which is very strong. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
see my gap is strategic thinking, and you have a conversation with the AI avatar to like, okay, what can you do? And then they ask like, what's your learning style? What is missing exactly? And they probe a bit further to then advise on development tips. So that's very strong. Also, if you look at coaching, I think AI can scale the whole coaching and more people can benefit from coaching. But of course, the whole emotional part, the human nuance, the intercultural sensitivity, that's something you still need coaches for. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it should always be, and the same goes for assessment. Yeah, from a candidate experience, you do. I mean, if you apply for a new role, it's two-way dialogue, right? And an assessment is still art and science, so there is it's still an art on running the assessments. So you
And
need a
just,
blend.
I want to talk about
Yeah,
bias and the risks of that. But let's carry on because we started talking about it, about the candidate or the leader who's being assessed, their experience. I mean, you mentioned earlier on that being asked the same three questions by a so-called robot, it didn't feel great.
yeah.
Um, What's the experience now? Does it feel like it's we're talking to a machine, or does it feel that we're talking? Does it feel like we're having a conversation with a human being?
It it definitely evolves towards you have a feel that you're talking to a human being. But of course, we're not there yet.
Mm.
But it feels pretty natural.
And are you seeing HR teams and L&D teams replacing people within their organizations with these AI tools yet? Or are you seeing it being
Yeah.
used to supplement and enhance their capabilities?
Supplement and enhance. I mean, maybe we have this conversation in a year or 2 years. I will have different
Mm.
answers. So it's hard to predict as well. I do think we're gonna use less assessors, less coaches, but the profession will still exist.
Yeah, it's a really
It's,
interesting one, isn't it? Because I think that as HR professionals, we could get quite anxious about our roles disappearing, but I don't see that with the clients that we work with. It does
no,
mean that HR, L&D, leadership development professionals are having to change what they offer
yeah,
and move up that food chain. So they're
yeah,
less administrative, less
exactly.
thinking about the logistics. All of that kind of stuff is just being done for them. But it does mean I mean, I think quite excitingly, really, that
Yeah,
actually we become again the human experts, and we
yeah,
can let go of the things that have perhaps got in the way of that, and we can enjoy and give our expertise as the true people experts,
yeah,
and as you say, those
yeah,
true nuances that
yeah,
perhaps aren't there yet with AI.
yeah. Fully agree. I think we can reinforce.
So, thinking about this issue of bias, um, and I'd like to kind of broaden this out, I think, a little bit, because there'll be some people listening to this who are not using AI yet. But when we think about assessment, uh, whether that be at points of promotion or hiring, or whether it be for developmental purposes, there is always a risk, isn't there, that those unconscious biases are present.
Yeah,
And of course, there's even then a risk that we import them into the AI tools that we deploy. How
yeah,
do you feel we can kind of effectively eliminate that bias in assessments, whether it's human or AI
yeah,
driven?
yeah. So I think there are two things. Just to take there is bias, but there's also noise. No, I know you're familiar probably with Kahneman's book around noise, where you have assessors, and because it's like, to give a Dubai example, it's too hot, there is no airco. I'm a bit becoming a bit grumpy, and I need to do an assessment that has a big impact. Yeah. So AI totally eliminates that. So if we look at noise, it's clear that AI is fairer, is better. Bias is a bit of a different story, which is not clear, and it's not about who's winning, like who's less biased. That's not the, I think that's not the thing. It's always an end, and we can reinforce as we discussed. The risk with AI is that the bias is reinforced. As an assessor, we also biased. I'm in this business over 20 years. I cannot say I'm
Yeah.
unbiased. That's not true. But at least you and me are differently biased, no? I mean, so that kind of equals each other out, while an AI system will reinforce that bias.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, that's the danger. So to tackle that, you have to train the AI system in the right way. You have to make sure that you have it's grounded in a framework that is reliable, valid, keep on tested, because it can become a black box that you don't even know how to explain certain decisions. So there you have to be very careful and mindful. So you need to have that testing of the system. Make sure if you launch that you train it in the right way, etc. You have an ethical framework around how you're going to use AI. So I think that's important.
I remember years ago, before AI was even kind of a thing, we still talked about robots. And I remember going to a lecture, and it was the head of computer science for a major university here in the UK. And she was talking about how there would come a point when robots, which we now call AI, but robots would replace, legal assessments, medical
Yeah,
diagnosis,
yeah,
accountancy judgments, and so on. And someone asked a question, yeah, but what about therapy? If nobody's going to want to go and sit in front of a robot to get their therapy. And she put it, I think she kind of made something that stuck with me all these years on. She said, it affronts us to think of it, but actually, if the experience we're getting is cheaper, available 24/7, and
yeah,
the
exactly.
quality of that therapy is consistently better, because
Yeah,
it's not just one therapist who might be having a bad day, your noise point, but actually it's taking the best of therapy from hundreds of
yeah,
thousands of therapists across the world and providing that therapy consistently at the same level of quality. She said eventually people will get over the fact that it's a robot, because it is cheaper, more
Yeah.
available, and better
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're talking about here, isn't
Yeah.
it? From the noise perspective, from the
Yeah.
bias perspective, I think it's a really interesting one in that as an HR professional, we often see the HR team saying, "Oh, this is beyond my level of understanding. I don't get the technology. I'm nervous about getting involved with it." But
Yeah.
actually, the earlier we get involved in the design and the development of the products that we want to use, the better, because there is a risk, isn't there? If we're just dealing with the end product, we're not confident
No.
how has bias been dealt with. Whereas if we're involved in the early stages of creating our own chat GPT in this
Yeah.
space or whatever, then at least we can have a greater levels of reassurance that it's multiple biases going in there rather than
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
maybe a bunch of tech bros.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Just to make people comfortable. I'm not, so people laugh at me because I'm not tech savvy, so at all. So I struggle. But that said, so I give you an example. Like we're developing for a client an AI automatic reporting. So they take information from the different psychometrics, reasoning, different exercises, but we need to give the input for what the AI is going to give as an output to and the candidate
Absolutely.
and the client. And so it remains very, they need the expertise to give that input. And you don't need to be a, like a tech person to do
Yeah.
that. Of course, I get help from my software developers to do that, and they make the magic happen. But
Yeah.
they need our input. So it's
Yeah,
also there.
absolutely.
It's
So
like
we've got to get
collaboration.
involved at the very early stages from the ground up.
Yeah. So you
Just
cannot leave it to
to
someone who's not an expert and just and not just the software. I don't mean
Yeah,
it. Don't,
I know what
you
you're
know what I
saying,
mean?
Tom.
Yeah,
I know
that's
what you're saying.
okay.
I don't know if any software engineers listening to this podcast, so I
No,
wouldn't
no,
worry too
probably
much. I
not.
think
So
we're
I
okay.
don't
I think
insult them.
no, I don't think so. I think we're okay. You mentioned about ethics a little while back, and that's the kind of final area I wouldn't mind exploring because this has always been an issue around that kind of data protection. We are asking very personal questions, people giving and exposing and making themselves vulnerable with their data, with the insights into their personality traits. And for some of the in-depth assessments I've done can be really quite probing and you feel quite exposed when you're going through it. But you see the person who's doing it, you understand the organization, you understand how your data is going to be used. But there, I suppose I would, how are invisible psychometrics and integrated into existing systems, invisible assessments, integrated into our existing system? And what are the implications of kind of passively collecting data to generate insights on strengths or areas of development? Is there any kind of ethical concerns there?
Definitely some ethical concerns. Yeah. So what you see now is, again, you can do some digital behavior analytics, where, like, because now we have a succession planning or high potential program. It's announced, it's communicated. We have a town hall to prep people, etc. So you know you're assessed. On this invisible psychometrics, it's based on emails, digital chats, whatever you can get your head around, and it already exists. So you have companies, I think Humanize, and there's also again in the Netherlands Keen Corp who are doing and using that for more for cultural analysis.
Yeah, so that kind of sentiment analysis,
Yeah, exactly.
what's the
Yeah,
vibe, how are people
yeah,
feeling? And
yeah.
you can see why that would be attractive. You're
Of
not having to
course.
do
Yeah,
the annual engagement survey necessarily.
yeah,
You
yeah,
just got
yeah,
that a
yeah,
pulse survey without people even knowing
yeah,
it's happening.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the if you look at those companies, they advocate for privacy, GDPR, etc. And it's still on an organizational level. And so it's not only that. So you can also you can think about using wearables or this aura rings or whoops or whatever, where companies are going to start measuring how well you slept, how healthy you are, etc. So as long as it's used on an organizational level with people knowing that they are used, I think that's fine. But there's a big risk.
Mm.
But even if you're advocate for confidentiality, privacy, etc., I'm not sure if you can trust top of the house laser that they're going to use it. And I've seen, I'm over 20 years in business. It's small examples, but for example, the use of 360, where
Mm.
you say, and everyone knows in the business that it's better used for development, not for performance. But I've seen it in practice that you do communication, says this is for development, your reports will not be shared, only with you. You do whatever you want, throw it in the garbage, share it with the public. It's your report, we're not going to see it. And then you get pressure from the CEO and see the report of Lucy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just don't trust it. I just
Yeah.
don't trust that the information is used in an ethical way.
Yeah. It's
So that's
interesting,
what
isn't it?
really
And I think,
concerns me.
there is that. I remember reading some research recently about employees' views on AI and the ethics around it, and do they trust their leaders to embrace AI in an ethically
Yeah.
responsible way? And
Yeah.
actually, the trust is not there. We see trust every year in corporate leadership dissipating, getting worse.
Yeah.
And so at that point where trust in leadership and corporate leadership and public leadership has never been so low, at that point we're saying give your data, or even not even give your data. We're just gonna find out about you whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
that's really quite problematic. And I,
Yeah.
my sense is that we haven't seen the those kind of, we've had a few small little scandals or small issues, but I think it's a debate that hasn't been had yet.
No. And then if you see like how some CEOs are bragging about how many layoffs thanks to AI,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that doesn't give me any trust that
No.
they're going to use this data and going to get
No,
optimum.
exactly. And so I think we kind of come full circle, don't we? We've got, on the one hand, we've got really fantastic opportunities with AI and huge risks.
Yeah.
What's your sense? I mean, I hesitate to ask you to kind of give us your predictions for the next few years because things are moving so quickly. But what is the way forward? What do you see happening in this space, so in the coming months or years?
So I hope that it's an end story, that the human's touch is still there. That's not the dehumanizing way of assessing people, and we work hand in hand with a system that can help us enhance and it makes it stronger, reduce bias, noise, etc. So that's my hope. My hope is also that there will be ethical frameworks, that it's all grounded in
Mm,
validity, reliability, and that's not misused. It's not like the big brother is getting bigger and bigger.
yeah, yeah,
And that's really
absolutely.
scary, and
Yeah,
that some groups are left out because they don't fit the AI algorithm,
yeah,
and they don't get recruited or hired. That's the scary part. So we have to be
yeah.
vigilant. That's the right English
Vigilant,
word, I
yeah,
guess, and mindful in doing the right thing. But at the same time, it's an exciting time to be there. So we're here to shape it as well. So I know for my company, we have the right people in place to shape it in the right
yeah.
direction.
So, well, let's end with that more optimistic note rather than the big brother. Let's think about the
Yeah,
opportunities. Tom,
exactly.
thank you for joining me today on HR
Thank you, Leslie.
Disrupted. It's
Always a
been
pleasure
really,
talking
really
to you.
interesting and great food for thought. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you so much.
Hi, I hope you found this useful. If you'd like more videos like this, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications.